we are trying to make the factory greener. We don't just generate the green products, but also we use the green energy to produce the green product and to make sure that we don't emit while we're shipping the green stuff. We're going to do our best part to make sure those things will be plugged in and we are doing a good business for the environment, for the US, but not only the manufacturing capacities.
If you've been following the US solar industry at all for the last several months to year, no doubt you're aware of the evolution of the industry, something that when I started back in 2006, I've seen waves of reshoring or domestic manufacturing as a conversation. We've seen a decade now of trade policy centered around both protecting and bringing back manufacturing to the U.S. shores. And so in the news, it seems every week, month, there are more announcements. Yet many of you ask the same questions I do. Where are all of these modules that are going to be manufactured? When will I get my hands on them? All too often, we hear in the project industry, PowerPoints, not power plants, we hear about factories that take many, many months to years to materialize from the time that they're announced. However, one such announcement was recently made that appears to sort of buck that trend. Trina Solar announced that they're going to be manufacturing in Wilmer, Texas, and the plant is, in fact, well underway, and the modules will be rolling off the lines very soon, and that they already have orders, something that we've come to expect from a company like Trina, one of the global leaders, and in fact, the largest provider of panels to the U.S. in the current year, 2023. So I thought it would be interesting to have Stephen Zhu, the president of Trina US, on the show to talk a bit about the complexities of reshoring, bringing a massive manufacturing facility from one of the largest manufacturers in the world over to the United States. I hope that this is interesting for you. It certainly was for me, having worked at a manufacturing company prior. Full disclosure, I've worked at Trina, and Trina has been a supporter of Suncast over the last year. Nevertheless, as the leader in the market, it makes a lot of sense for us to talk to someone who very squarely understands what's at stake and can talk about how this all came together. Today, we're going to talk with Stephen and get into the folds, really understand the complex situation that is domestic manufacturing for the U.S. solar industry. If you like this kind of conversation, you are in the right place, because each and every week, twice a week, we have Tactical Tuesdays like this one and long executive profiles on Thursdays, where we line up those who are lining up the clean energy sector here in the United States so that we can peel back the layers, pull back the veil, and share with you their insights on how the energy transition is really happening. You should subscribe to the show if this is the kind of stuff that you really dig. That way you won't miss out on it. You can also check out more than 650 episodes just like this in the back catalog at mysuncast.com. For now, let's get ready to tune up your skills, Solar Warrior, as we dig into another tactical, practical episode here on Suncast. Stephen, I said in the outset that Trina is the largest manufacturer in the U.S. That might come as a surprise to some because these data are not always easily attained. Can you give us a sense of scale for Trina right now in the global market and sort of put the U.S. portfolio in context?
Sure. Globally, we do have roughly about, 50 gigawatt already running in China, which support the regions like Europe, Latin American, Japan, most of the Asian countries. US, on the other hand, is a very special region due to all kind of regulations and requirements, ABCVD, that happened in the last 5 or even 8 years. We put up our manufacture capacity in Southeast Asia, in both Vietnam and Thailand. Currently in Vietnam, we do have 4.5 gigawatt of the capacity per technology, P-type, and 210, most advanced, wafer size and the cell size.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have another 2.5 gigawatt of the capacity in Thailand, which is TOPCon technology, N-type. and also use the 210 wafers. And this new manufacturer we put in US in Wilmer, Texas. It's a 5 gigawatt of the the module facility, and it probably will be half, half of the P type, half of the N type. The reason is, our 210 technology on the P type is already the most advanced ones on the P type, in terms of the power density, in terms of the LCOE, and then next generation of the TOPCon is coming rolling also, and Trina is actually honored to be the first one to introduce the, TOPCon. We're already shipping, N-type to the US market, from Southeast Asia capacity. So it is a nature for us to also, to compensate the demand from, different customers with different, products.
If you're at liberty to share, or at least a range, what's the scale of shipment into the US by Trina in 2023?
2023, we actually did very good. We, based on the importation data, we're actually number one in terms of the volume shipping to the US. And we totally shipped about 4.5 gigawatt. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit more than that, because some of the inventory that actually was allocated, to a European customer, a big one, which also doing the project in the US. So I would say, the total volume this year probably going to be close to 5 gigawatt.
5 gigawatts is phenomenal. There wasn't 5 gigawatts of Trina production in the world when I was working at Trina back in 2013. I remember we were, I think we were celebrating something like 2 or 3 gigawatts
I know.
in scale, right? So what a tremendous growth curve just in the, I've been out of Trina now for about a decade, which is kind of hard to believe. John Della Piazza, who runs Trina North America, started the day before me and now runs Trina sales in North America. Of course, the reason that we're here today is to talk specifically about that Wilmer facility. And I have some questions for those who just maybe are really trying to wrap their head around how quickly this manufacturing reshoring may or may not happen, and what all goes into it. How complex or involved is it? So I'll start with simply site selection. There's so much at stake to determine where a facility goes. Can you break down for us what goes into the process of site selection? What happens behind the scenes there?
As a matter of fact, this is not the first time we investigated into the US. By 2014 or 2013, when the AVCVD just came out, and we start to investigate, and US is a natural place because, the manufacturer has to be close to the market, as we said, in order to, lower the logistic costs and mitigate the risk for the future regulation changes. But back to that time, without the RA incentives, the US, cost is still very high. And the majority into two categories. One is the CAPEX. And here, because the material, because the labor, the CAPEX for the factory normally are 3 or even 4 times than what happened in China. Partially because of the, material cost, partially because, people over there are working more in density and there's more labor that can contribute to the project. Therefore, the project can finish in 3 to 4 months or, maximum 6 months. But in here, in order to build a factory, most of the projects, if that's a greenfield, starting from fresh ground, it probably will take at least a year. And also, the OPEX, regarding the final product, the cost, can that be competitive in the market? Because, by the end of the day, customer buying all the modules, they don't care whether that came from, imported module, or that came from the local market.
Yeah.
And in order for their project to be, financial rigid and, investment, interested, and, they have to be, the certain cost has to be reasonable. And, the quality, is also very important. I actually heard, there's some of the manufacturers, they were in US and they move over to Southeast Asia and now they are coming back. And somehow, due to the yield of the manufacturing, or the productivity of the manufacturing, or due to the management of the manufacturing, their efficiency are always like 1%, 2% lower than they're expected. And that's called actually, those kind of efficiency, discount causing their cost is also going higher. It's by nature that within the certain factory, if you be able to produce, for example, 6 gigawatt, and compare with a lower technology that you can only produce 4 gigawatt, and 6 gigawatts cost obviously, will be much lower than the 4 gigawatt output, because you still share almost the same electricity consumption, you share the same
Yeah.
depreciation of the capex. So more productive the factory can be, lower the cost it will be.
When you refer to efficiency, you're referring to the efficiency of the factory itself, not the module coming off the line.
Both, actually, the productivity and the efficiency. If you run through the line and you be able to produce, let's say, 2 gigawatt instead of 1.8 gigawatt, obviously your output is bigger. And if your efficiency is just a tiny higher than your competitors, then obviously it's almost same cost to produce the higher efficiency. So higher the efficiency, lower the cost.
Right. And the higher the efficiency, the more effective gigawatts you're able to deploy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you were referring to the module efficiency. I mean, I just want to make sure I'm understanding that some peers have had an actual module efficiency reduction when they begin manufacturing in new locations. Is that what you're saying?
Always during the ramping
Yeah.
up stage,
Okay.
you have to testing everything, you have to tune the machines.
Sure.
Faster you can ramping up to the full productivities, and lower cost you can have. And also that demonstrate how well you can train your worker to make sure they become a skilled, experienced, a producer, instead of just there's a lot of little things, like that's what what I said, that sometimes the technology are exactly same, but the know-hows, the management, the productivity, all these little things will eventually be the key factors for a manufacturer to be successful or not.
Well, let's talk about successful or not manufacturing, because I would suppose that there are several key factors in the decision-making process. You have been with Trina practically from the inception, have been responsible in many ways for helping stand up manufacturing around the world for the organization, and have deep insight into how and why not just the scale of the plant, but the location of the plant are selected. What made Wilmer in Texas specifically stand out as a community, and what were some of the key factors that were must-haves for Trina in selecting both Wilmer and Texas? And I presume there are lots of factors, from local incentives to workforce, but I want you to just kind of unpack some of those for us.
No, trust me, there are more than a handful of the factors that will impact the decision making regarding the sites. But majority political environment is definitely one of the important things. In US, there's a CFIUS, which is the regulation to manage the foreign investment. If you have a joint venture, or if you're trying to occupy a land, or if you are if your site is too close to a military base, then your investment, you need to be careful with those kind of things. And some other things like the power, the water and sewage, those consumptions, and the land, of course, it's a big part of the capex. And the labor sources, that the factory, the 5 gigawatt of the factory probably need to use around like 1,500 people. I would say half of those need to be skilled workers, and half of those will be blue collars. Both of them are super important to the success of the factory. So we picked up the place in Texas because all those factors are considered. Texas has enough land. It's a big enough state that have a lot of options that give you the choices. to select from. And also, Dallas area had, especially the major metropolitan areas. First, they are, less military related. Military places are in the rural areas, but close to the metropolitan area. Our lawyers, our, law firms, did a thorough, screening process in order to make sure that there's no current, issues and there's no future risks either. And also, transportation wise, Texas is very close for the final product is very close to the market, right? California, Texas, most of the southern states are the major market for solar. And
Yeah.
therefore, your final product can roll out the production line and directly go to the market within 100 miles or, 500 miles. And that's the best saving for the customer. It's best saving for us also. And same thing, about the raw materials. A lot of the raw material current supply chains are still rely on the importation. So, the Wilmer site is right in between I-35 and I-45, and it's only about 2 hours drive from, Houston port, the major port on the southern. So it's very convenient to get the material in, and it's a major hub for the train station also, which can be a backup, for the truckings. It goes directly to the Long Beach port and all the way to the East Coast also, yeah, a lot of factors. We actually spent more than 2 years. We didn't start this search, after RI came out. We actually, way before that, if you remember the last 3 years, there's been a lot of hiccups in terms of the, international shipping, in terms of the regulation changes, tariff risks. The tariff was, raised up for the 201, and then president exempted, and later
Mm-hmm.
it came back and then exempt again for the bifacial. So there are a couple of runs. One of the major things that we do think at least the U.S. manufacturer can mitigate a lot of uncertainties along the supply chain, along the material side, to make sure both the customer and the manufacturer can predict what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of when you try to shipping something and later the regulation gonna change, you have to pay a much higher price, or you have to switch or adjust your supply chain accordingly in order to make sure the importation are smoothly, which are all part of the game. But that's why I say we are the veteran in the industry. We're probably the longest survivor of this industry and the U.S. market. So we've been experienced all of this, ABCBD, UFLPA,
Mm-hmm.
WRO, anti-circumventing. So we understand, the regulations are subject to change. What we can do from our side is to, keep on evolving our supply chain, keep on, reducing the possibilities, for those uncertainties, and diversify our capacities. So we still have the Southeast Asia capacity and also the U.S. capacity. Uh, don't forget that they still need the wafer supplies. They still need the polysilicon supplies coming to the factory in order to produce the module in here. So, yeah, we are, we're going to keep on, deploying our capacities and make sure, if anything happen, we do have a solution for that.
I think it's interesting. A number of folks have chosen strategic ports, like very specifically Jacksonville, Jinko, Seg recently, and Houston. It seems like proximity to a major port is a big plus. So Houston seems like a logical choice. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wow, this is a suburb of Dallas. You addressed it, I think, in the brief touch point on transportation, but where you're located in Dallas specifically is at the middle of not only the I-45 and 35, but also 20, which runs east west. It's a lot more sort of centrally located from a transportation hub perspective. It sounds like it's closer to rail as well. And if I hear you correctly, the suggestion is that Dallas is going to actually be a more efficient transportation hub than one of the other alternative ports.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because it's right in the central, it's very close to the southern states and,
Mm-hmm.
railway, airlines, road transportation, all are very convenient. I won't say it's a perfect place, but, so far, based on our scorecard, Dallas is
Yeah.
very high up there.
Well, as you said, it took 2 years to not only find, but then start to really build out both the thesis and the plant itself. How at the present time, the time of recording, it's nearing the end of 2023. How close to completion is the factory?
The completion of the factory, the building, will be finished this month, almost this month, and everything will be ready for the equipment to be moved in Q1, and
Wow.
the first product should roll out by the middle of next year.
You mentioned water availability. It's something that I also wanted to follow up on because at the moment, the plant, 4.5 gigawatts, is dedicated to, as you said, half P, half N type production of modules. But there's the whole upstream component that is involved in creating the cells that go into the modules. Where will Trina be sourcing the raw materials for this facility in the near term, and then how might that evolve?
Yeah, in the last 3 years, China is probably one of the pioneer that actually start to at adjusting our supply chain because of the regulations, right? UFLPA that requires the traceability of
Hmm.
all the raw materials all the way down to the mine, silicon mine, and also, anti-circumvention that's, requires us to have the wafer outside China in order to avoid ABCPD. And there could be, you know, so by taking all those into consideration, um, the real deployment of the supply chain or adaptation of the supply chain, happened 3 years ago. Starting from 2021,
Hmm.
we start to using 100% of the non-Chinese poly to supply US, although it's tougher, to negotiate with, some of the overseas polysilicon makers because their volume are kind of limited and their expansion takes much longer time. They demand multiple year contracts. But we think it's, if you want to do the business sustainably, if you want
Yeah.
to do the business 10 years, or even longer, you don't care,
Hmm.
how long the contract you have to lock in upstream, right? For some smaller players, it might not be the ideal solution for them because, maybe they just came when the market is hot. And so when the market is gone, they don't have to, worry too much about that. But,
Hmm.
for us, we are dedicated to supply US. We have to arrange those supply chains ahead of the time and make sure in long run, the supply chain is stable and secure. Same thing as the
Yeah.
wafer. We put a 5 gigawatt of the wafer in Vietnam already, and we are adding another 5 gigawatt, into the pool. So altogether, we will have 10 gigawatt of the wafer supplies that can be available for the US in the next 10 years or even forever,
Yeah.
which is very critical. For compare with some of the companies, I heard recently there's another, a Chinese manufacturer. They are starting a wafer factory, in Thailand. Um, but their original technology was the casting, was the multicrystalline, and they are switching over to the monocrystalline. But Trina has always been, we've been diversified. We had our
Hmm.
crystalline before, we have our wafer before, and now it's just a, reopening of those lines. So, it would be much easier for us to, bring everything up to date.
Sure.
And all of those are key factors of the supply chains. You don't expect to build those things within one day or even 1 year. You have to have a throughout plans, long-term plans, getting things piece by piece and then keep on optimizing them. Um, So that's why, we told our suppliers also the same story that you don't expect us only to sign one contract and then it's going to last forever, right? We're going to keep on signing with you every year. Through Trina's history, through Solar's history, that's exactly what we did. And same
Mm.
thing as the downstream players, when asking them to fully committed to the whole factory, right? We give them some flexibilities, we give them some choices, and we actually suggest them to start with low and gradually moving up also. All of those, what I consider are making the plan more feasible, more
Yeah.
less problematic, when the things keep on moving, right? In this industry, we have to learn how to manage things dynamically. We cannot use a certain rule that apply for everything forever. You have to keep a close eye on the situation and you have to be really keen regarding the changes. You have to react on the changes. You have to prepare for the future changes also. Like I always tell my team that, it doesn't matter who's guessing is right. It's a matter of when the things happen, what is our action plans? What is our contingency plans?
One of the things that Trina has consistently done, you said the longest survivor, and I've heard in private that your goal is to be the last survivor as the industry grows. Trina's goal from the beginning is to prevail not only as a world class provider, but to build as though you need to endure long periods of hardship or drought, so to speak. It's that sort of resistance built in to the business. I presume, therefore, that a module manufacturing facility is not the sort of the last stop in the chain of supply that you guys are organizing. Can you talk about the evolution? Obviously, you've got almost 10 gigawatts of wafer availability in Thailand, but eventually, and obviously as well, those who've read the IRA know that you do get more sort of credit, so to speak, if you have more upchain or sort of upstream supply. Talk to the process apart from the module manufacturing that is required to expand beyond modules to wafers, cells, ingot. How might that evolve, and how might that site selection, like Texas or other locations, potentially change if Trina decides to deploy more than just a module factory here?
Well, first, to be the longest survivor is not anything that we specifically, it's not our goal, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just the results. The result came from the logic, the business common sense. A
Mm.
lot of people are too aggressive and that they jump in and all in and bet on something and to take the opportunity because the solar is so hot, right? Sometimes. And the Trina, on the other hand, we're dedicated to the industry. So we definitely go long term. And so every decision we make, it has to make sense, not only for 1 year, also for multiple years. Sustainability and, stability, security are the key words that when we make our decisions. And, by business nature, the factory alone, you can put a factory anywhere, right? As long as, especially the factory is on the downstream side, on the module side, it's not as hard or technology sensitive as cell or the wafer or even polysilicon, right? But, when you think about the overall things, if you truly gonna stay in the market in the long run, you have to bring the ecosystems. You have to bring the bomb suppliers. You have to bring the service suppliers closer to your factory as much as possible. Therefore, it will lower the cost of the overall for everybody. A lot of the money and costs are wasted during the transportation, during the certification,
Mm-hmm.
during importing tariffs and whatever things, right? So it definitely makes sense, to build the ecosystem so that in the future your final product is cost competitive and technology safe and has the potentials to go into the future. Same thing as the upstream. For example, that module, the major raw material is a cell. So where your cell gonna come from? And currently, U.S., for example, besides the RA, they're trying to put up the guidelines for the domestic contents to earn additional 10% of the ITC for the downstream investors. In order to qualify that, and you have to do something extra, than just assembly the module here. So we definitely are consider, the cell also, and same thing as the UFLPA, right?
Yeah.
That if the UFLPA is kind of a requirement, traceability to make sure the whole supply chain is ethical and it's labor safe, that you have to deploy those ones. That's why even the domestic content doesn't require, we still build up with the US polymakers, sign the contract with those ones. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, there's a lot of things embedded into the value chain. Like I said,
Yeah.
sometimes saving the logistic cost is good. Sometimes, it's not very sensitive. For example, the wafer, right? The wafer,
Yeah.
can that be 1,000 miles away? It's possible because, you ship the wafer in the pack and, it's much less lost or less logistic cost in between. Therefore, logistic cost is not a huge factors for the final product cost. Therefore,
Yeah.
it is possible to put the wafer a little bit, apart from the module side or from the cell
Hmm.
side. But on the other hand, upstream productions, especially wafer and cell, it does require more utility, more electricities, more, water. And
Right.
on the other hand, the permitting are tougher, for the upstream, for the pollution reasons, for the,
Hmm.
water treatment reasons. Therefore, you probably cannot put a cell very close to a metropolitan area, because the permit is just much harder to get and it take much longer time. So you probably have to find some other places which is more, utility, friendly, cost, competitive. So all those factors will be taken into consideration. Same thing as the ecosystems.
Yeah.
That is definite the long-term players consideration. For those opportunisms, they don't care. They just come here, build a factory, grab 2 years of incentive, and then the market is gone and they're gone.
Mm.
We are not those players.
You mentioned a couple of times, and so for those who are unfamiliar with the acronym, I'll unpack it. UFLPA, which is Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. It's in reference to forced labor practices that are both real and presumed in a rural area in China, a very large area in China, where in fact forced labor has been proven. And so therefore traceability, or the ability to know all of the inputs and components, has become very important in the industry over the last 2 to 3 years, as the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency put in a restriction on UFLPA. I'll link to that for folks who are unfamiliar with it. One of the things that also is very complex, as you mentioned, that we have to take into consideration is when you're building out the plant. Yeah, you got to locate the facility. You got to find it in a friendly community and state that has policies that are attractive. You got to have a place that's got enough electricity. It's got to be central to transportation. I think potentially the hardest nut to crack is the workforce. A facility this size is going to need a significant workforce. What are the kinds of jobs available? How many will there be for this new plant in Wilmer? And help us understand a bit of workforce development.
Yeah, I mean, for 5 gigawatt of the manufacturer, it doesn't matter module or cell. Roughly, it needs about 12 to 1,600. That will create this many of the job opportunities. Like I said, a lot of them do need a skill, technicians to run the factory instead of just carry the stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we definitely need to be close to the labor sources in order to find enough options. On the other hand, we're going to dip deeper into the community to build the program together with the local schools, technician schools, in order to make sure our worker can be trained, our labor pool can be trained in order to adapt to the skills that's required. We are sending the key persons also over to our existing manufacturer in Southeast Asia to be trained on the assembly line. We are also sending the trainers over to here to teach the worker in here because, those works need to have hands-on training. You cannot just read
Yeah.
a menu and then operate the machine. You have to know how to, make things better. You have to know how to troubleshooting. You have to make sure that how to keep on optimizing. So all those things are very critical. Again, it takes time. We understand that. We're well prepared for that. And so that's why we have a whole team to build this. And Trina has some advantages because, we do have our existing presenting in the US already. I remember I mentioned that we do have a team size of the 80 people all locally here. And among them, it's not only sales. Even from the beginning, we have our lawyers, we have our finance, we have our operation, warehousing, logistic, human resource. So all of them are contributing to the project and to help the company to expand also, obviously. That will make things much easier because, all the local team, they really understand the culture. They understand the labor laws. They understand what's required. That makes things much more efficient. And that could mitigate a lot of risk also. Because, you go to any of the new country to invest a huge amount of the money, you definitely don't want, build things up and then 2 years later you say, oh, I forgot this. Or I step into a trap or whatever.
So Stephen, if I hear you correctly in explaining the complications involved outside of the relatively simplistic nature of a module manufacturing facility compared with the overarching upstream development, there does seem to be a phase 2 with something beyond a module manufacturing plant in play for Trina here in the US.
For sure. Yeah, it will be phase 2, probably phase 3, and this is just the beginning.
Just the beginning. Well, more to come. We'll be waiting with bated breath to hear more. I'm certain that you all will not, will not announce until things are fully baked, as has been the tradition for Trina, and for that I'm grateful. Let's end on a little bit more of the sort of the overarching perspective from a company that has been for more than a decade really entrenched here in North America with a large staff, a local sort of culturally aware team that is looking at how to serve the industry, as you pointed out, for longer than just a couple of years that we might get benefits from the current government. Outside of the plant itself and the module technology, is there anything in particular that you all are looking at, sort of overarching ESG criteria that your clients care about around shipping and things like that?
Oh yeah, everything. Generally speaking, like I said, it's not one factories that we're trying to do. We are trying to make the factory greener. We're building some of the small solar projects right beside. We're building the solar, parking lot shade, to make sure that we're doing the renewable industry, right? We don't just generate the green products, but also we use the green energy to produce the, green product also. And another good example will be the logistic. We are gradually adapting to the EV trucking, to make sure, I think by 2026 or 27, we're going to adapt to 100% of the EV for all Trina's trucking, and to make sure that we don't emit while we're shipping the green stuff, right?
Wow.
So a lot of things, a little piece here, a little piece there. We're going to do our best part, to make sure those things will be plugged in, and we are doing a good business, for the environment, for the U.S., but not only the manufacturing capacities.
Fantastic, Stephen. I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting to hear the commitment to a community here in the United States, more than 1,000 domestic jobs, and even looking further afield to things like fully electrified transportation fleets. Clearly, Trina continues to lead in action, not just in word. Stephen, I know that you have a lot on your plate. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Suncast community for taking time to help us understand the complexities and what we all have to think about when trying to understand the announcements of what is coming to market in terms of who's manufacturing what locally and the reality of deployment. I think Trina is one of those examples of really putting their money where their mouth is, and I look forward to seeing 4.5 gigawatts and more of Trina's products being manufactured right here on Texas soil.
It's my pleasure. Like I said, it's only the beginning, so we're gonna keep on doing that.
There you have it, Solar Warriors. Thanks again to Stephen, Sue, and the Trina team here in the United States for bringing manufacturing to the United States. Of course, they're not the only ones, but I'm grateful that as an alumni, Trina is finally committing to bringing their solar modules and manufacturing expertise and capabilities as the leading importer of solar panels to the United States and as a Chinese headquartered manufacturing company to our nearshoring and re-domestication of this industry, as it were. Stephen has truly been a pioneer in this business. In fact, first episode in a month of 2024 will be a much longer episode with Stephen, where we dig in to his entire background, how he helped launch Trina into the international module manufacturing behemoth that it is now. And I welcome your questions. What else did we not uncover here that is important to understand? Hopefully you learned a lot more about what to look for and how complex it is to set up manufacturing here on U.S. soil. I'm proud of all the companies that have made a commitment to bolster our United States solar industry. We still don't have enough coming here domestically to cover the massive expansion and demand that we need in order to meet our climate goals and our renewable energy targets. So I'd like to hear from you. Shoot me a message over on LinkedIn. Please connect with me there. It's easy to find those connections right in the description of the podcast player that you are listening on. Or if you're watching on YouTube, thank you as well. Please click that like button and let the world know that Suncast Media is giving you value. Leave us a comment down below and let us know what else you'd like to see us cover. What questions would you have asked? If you'd like to click down to some of the other resources I mentioned, from UFLPA to the CFIUS committee regulations, I've linked all of them over at mysuncast.com. Click on the episode notes tab. Of course, that's also where you'll find more than 650 episodes in our back catalog of leaders just like Stephen on the front lines of the clean energy transition. Hey, while you're there, subscribe to our newsletter so you will not only be notified once the next episode of Suncast is live, but you'll hear from me from time to time about all the places that we're visiting and the exciting and interesting trends that we are following as I am interfacing with the leaders in the industry like Stephen each and every week. And of course, last but not least, every Thursday we have an exciting deep dive with an industry executive. We call them executive profiles. I hope you'll join us again on Thursday. Till then, remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.